Welcome to the Deep Dive,
Yep.
where we crack open complex topics and really try to get to the core ideas.
Extract those essential nuggets of knowledge.
Exactly. Today, we're diving into something really fascinating, kind of a paradox, actually. It's plagued some of the world's most admired companies. I mean, think about firms like Sears Roebuck, once these huge retail powerhouses, or giants like IBM, even Apple in certain periods.
Companies praised for being really well managed.
Right. Astute management, relentless innovation, focusing on the customer, all the stuff you're supposed to do.
And yet
they stumbled, sometimes really badly, even catastrophically. It just begs the question, doesn't it? How can these great firms, doing everything seemingly right, fail?
it is a disquieting question, really makes you think. And it challenges our sort of conventional wisdom about what good management actually means.
Yeah.
Because the material we've explored today, it reveals that often it's not about bad management or people getting lazy or not trying hard enough.
It's something deeper.
Exactly. Instead, we find that the very principles of good management, the things that make them successful, well, when applied rigidly or maybe in the wrong context, they can inadvertently sow the seeds of eventual failure.
Wow.
And this deep dive, it's really going to illuminate this core idea. It's what's at the heart of the innovator's dilemma.
That's right. We're sifting through some compelling research, real-world case studies, stuff that shows us how doing the right thing can, surprisingly, lead companies astray.
Sometimes with devastating consequences.
Yeah. So our mission today is to unpack this powerful concept, give you, the listener, a kind of shortcut to understanding these hidden forces behind corporate wins and, well, unexpected losses.
These are insights you really won't find in a typical news brief, I think.
Definitely not. We'll explore examples from super fast-paced tech, like disk drives.
Which changed constantly.
Right, to seemingly slower industries like mechanical excavator.
Yeah, big earth-moving stuff.
And we'll even connect it directly to challenges facing the auto industry right now, today.
It's very relevant.
So let's get into it. Okay, so to really understand why these great companies can fail, we need to grapple with this fundamental distinction. It underpins everything.
It really does.
It's about two very different kinds of innovation that shape markets. It all starts here.
Okay.
Let's begin with the first type, sustaining technologies.
Right.
These are the innovations we see all the time, the improvements that, enhance the performance of existing products.
Along the lines that customers already care about.
Exactly. Along the dimensions that mainstream customers already value. Think of it like climbing higher up the same mountain. You make your ascent faster, maybe your view gets clearer.
Better performance on the known metrics.
Yeah. And these can be small tweaks, incremental changes, continuous improvement.
Or they can actually be quite radical. Big leaps in performance.
Right, big leaps. But critically, their goal is always to deliver more or better of what customers currently want, in ways they already recognize, ways they appreciate.
And this is where established firms, the big players, they truly shine.
They're good at this.
Exceptionally good. What becomes clear from the research is that these well-managed existing companies, they have robust systems designed precisely for this.
For what?
For listening intently to their most important customers, understanding their evolving needs, and then investing aggressively in R&D, in manufacturing capabilities, whatever it takes to deliver those next-generation products.
So they're built for it.
They consistently perform at the top here. It's their bread and butter.
Absolutely. Let's take the disk drive industry. I mean, that was just a whirlwind of technological change.
Constant churn.
Consider the relentless evolution of, read-write heads and the disks themselves. You saw this progression from ferrite heads to thin film, then to magneto-resistive heads.
Right. Each step was a big deal.
Huge deal. And each jump dramatically increased recording density, which is a clear sustaining improvement, right?
Yeah.
Because it directly enhanced capacity.
Which is exactly what their computer customers desperately wanted. More storage, faster access.
Exactly. And our sources highlight how these pioneering companies, IBM, control data, digital equipment, storage technology, they poured massive resources into these advancements.
Big money.
Big money, like over $50 million in 8 years just on developing thin film disks alone.
Wow.
This wasn't easy tech. It was complex, it was expensive, but it's sustaining.
Yeah.
Because it delivered more of what their current most profitable customers already desired.
Yeah.
More capacity, more speed. And they excelled at it.
Precisely. And you see the same pattern even in, say, the mechanical excavator industry. It seems totally different, right? Low tech almost.
Yeah, dirt movers.
But the continuous improvement of those cable-actuated shovels, making them bigger, faster, more precise, that was consistently adopted by the leading firms in that space.
So it's a general principle.
It demonstrates that whether an industry moves super fast or at a more measured pace, when the technology aligns with existing customer needs, when it improves along those established performance metrics, established firms are champions.
Their whole organization is geared towards it.
Their structure, their processes, their values, they're built to identify, develop, and commercialize these improvements.
Okay, now here's where it gets really interesting. Because we introduced this second type of innovation. Disruptive technologies.
Ah, the disruptors.
This is where that paradox, the innovator's dilemma, truly emerges. Because disruptive innovations, they're typically simpler, often cheaper.
And here's the really counterintuitive part.
Yeah.
They initially offer less performance on the traditional metrics that mainstream customers care about.
So they actually look worse.
They can, yeah. They don't make the existing product better in the ways customers are used to. They might even seem inferior, at first glance anyway.
Okay, so why would anyone want them?
Ah, and here's the crucial point. They introduce a different package of attributes. Something new that is valued by a new or emerging market.
A different set of customers.
Often customers that the established players aren't really focused on. Maybe they're the least profitable segments or segments the big guys ignore altogether. And these innovations, they frequently involve technologically straightforward components, maybe assembled in a novel, simpler way, a simpler architecture.
So it's not always about super advanced tech.
Not necessarily, especially at the start. It's not about pushing the envelope on existing performance for existing customers. It's about creating an entirely new basis of value for a new set of users.
And this is the innovator's dilemma in full effect then.
Right here.
Despite their competence, despite having smart managers, tons of resources, established firms consistently stumble with these disruptive technologies.
It's truly counterintuitive.
If these firms are so well managed, so customer-focused, how does this competence become a vulnerability? What's the mechanism? How do their strengths become weaknesses?
That's the absolute heart of the dilemma, the very success factors for sustaining innovation.
Like listening to customers.
Listening intently to current customers, investing in their stated needs, relentlessly pursuing higher margins, bigger market opportunities.
Well, sounds good.
Sounds great. But those very things become the reasons for failure when disruptive technologies emerge.
How so?
Because these disruptive innovations, they just don't make sense for the mainstream business. They often offer lower margins, they serve smaller markets initially, or they simply don't align with what the company's existing best customers want or need.
So they look unattractive.
Exactly. So until it's often way too late, the established firm sees no compelling reason to invest in them. They're busy climbing their familiar, profitable mountain.
And they completely miss the new, smaller hill forming right next to it.
Perfectly put. They don't even see it as a hill worth climbing.
Okay, let's dig into some powerful examples of these disruptive technologies. Make it really concrete. Back to the disk drive industry.
A great place to see this.
The most important disruptive technologies there weren't about improving capacity or speed on the existing drives. Instead, they were about architectural innovations, things that drastically shrunk the physical size of the drives.
The form factor changed.
Totally. We're talking the shift from, like, 14-inch diameter discs down to 8-inch, then 5.25-inch, eventually 3.5-inch drives.
Each step smaller.
And our sources give this stark comparison. A 5.25-inch drive in 1981 was vastly inferior to an 8-inch drive.
Yeah.
In capacity, cost per megabyte, access time, all the things mini computer manufacturers cared about.
So if you were selling to mini computer companies...
Why would you ever want a 5.25-inch drive? It made 0 sense for your customers.
Exactly. But it was small, lightweight, and surprisingly affordable, around $2,000 maybe.
Okay.
Which made it perfectly appealing to a totally different group, the emerging personal computer market.
Ah, the PC market, which the big guys weren't in yet.
Right. Mainframe and mini computer manufacturers initially had no interest. It was too small, the margins looked terrible, and the performance requirements were completely different.
So they looked at the 5.25-inch drive.
And saw a technically inferior product with no market for their customers. They didn't see the new market it would actually create. They were trapped by their existing view.
And this pattern, it holds across really diverse industries, like Mechanical excavators again.
Mm-hmm.
After World War II, hydraulic excavators emerged. But initially, they were pretty small. They had a very short reach.
Useless for the big jobs.
Utterly useless for large-scale mining or general contractors who needed to move massive amounts of earth. But they were perfect as attachments for small farm tractors. And residential contractors, guys who often dug narrow ditches by hand or with simple shovels. They found them incredibly useful.
For new applications.
Exactly. New applications that didn't require huge capacity. The traditional cable-actuated shovel makers, they just didn't see the market for them.
Because their existing customers had no use for them?
Right. Why would they invest in a smaller, less powerful machine when their big customers demanded bigger, faster ones? It seemed illogical.
The steel industry. Another compelling case.
Okay.
Yeah, the traditional integrated mills. Huge operations, smelting iron ore, refining it, producing steel. Very high-quality stuff.
For cars, appliances.
Exactly, where exacting standards were critical. Then came mini-mills.
Different model.
Dramatically different. They melted scrap steel in electric arc furnaces. And they produced steel of, well, marginal quality initially, mostly for rebars.
Rebars, like for reinforcing concrete.
Yeah, the very bottom of the market,
Yeah.
where quality was less of a concern than price.
So the big mills didn't care about that market.
They were almost relieved to be rid of the rebar business. It had low margins, customers were super price sensitive, always switching suppliers for a tiny difference. It was a headache for them.
Okay, so they let it go.
Willingly.
But here's the kicker, right? These mini-mills, they were dramatically cheaper to build. Like $400 million versus maybe $6 billion for an integrated mill.
Wow, huge difference.
And they were far more labor efficient, maybe 0.6 labor hours per ton versus 2.3 for the big mills.
Much lower cost structure.
Exactly.
Yeah.
This low-cost structure, combined with a relentless focus on this initially underserved market, that was the disruptive force.
They got a foothold.
They got a foothold in the low end, and they improved their technology over time and gradually began to challenge the integrated mills in higher quality segments, moving up the market from below.
Classic disruptive pattern, and you even saw this in retailing. The rise of discount stores, Corvettes, later Kmart.
Right.
They offered lower prices, focused on self-selling national brands, and they targeted young wives of blue-collar workers, a segment traditional department stores completely ignored.
Department stores had a different model.
Totally different. High-margin model, maybe 40% gross margin, turning inventory 4 times a year. They saw no reason to pursue a model of lower margins and higher turns.
Even if the overall return could be similar.
Even then, this new business model was disruptive to their established way of operating, their definition of value, which was service, selection, luxury. The traditional players just couldn't make the numbers work for the discount model within their existing framework. It didn't fit.
Okay, so we've got these two types of innovation. Sustaining, which incumbents are great at, and disruptive, which they often miss. But what does this mean at a deeper level? How do decisions actually get made inside these smart companies?
Yeah, why do they make choices that seem wrong in hindsight?
It seems to come down to where companies are embedded. Our sources call it a value network. This seems like a critical concept.
It really is. Companies don't operate in a vacuum, right? They're embedded in these nested value network.
What does that mean exactly, a value network?
It essentially defines the context, how value is measured in that market, what problems customers need solved, how much they'll pay for solutions, and even the required cost structures you need to be profitable in that network.
So it sets the rules of the game.
Pretty much. The unique rank ordering of important product attributes like, is price more important than performance? Is size more important than speed? That defines the boundaries of a specific value network.
And what's valuable in one network
might be totally irrelevant or even a negative in another network. It's like a gravitational field, as you said earlier. It pulls the company in a certain direction, shapes what they see as important.
That's a great analogy, the gravity metaphor. And the sources give a clear example with disk drives again.
Yeah, it's illustrative.
For the mainstream mainframe computer network, value was primarily measured by capacity, speed, reliability, top performance.
And that market was demanding. Long sales cycles, custom integration, lots of support.
Which justified high prices. Gross profit margins, maybe 50–60%.
Right. But then you look at the emerging network for personal computers, portable computing.
Different priorities.
Totally different. Value there was defined by ruggedness, low power consumption, and crucially, small size and low price.
So performance wasn't number one.
Not in the same way. And this different set of priorities meant you could run a profitable business with much lower gross margins, maybe 15–20%, high volume, lower support sales model.
So they're just vastly different ecosystems, even for what seems like the same core product, a disk drive.
Exactly. Your organization literally sees a different definition of value depending on which network it primarily serves.
And this connects directly to cost structures and profitability, right? This sort of invisible hand-guiding decisions.
Absolutely. Each value network has a specific cost structure that dictates what kind of margins, what returns are considered good or acceptable.
So innovations that fit your current network.
Or promise a move to an even higher margin one. Those look profitable, attractive, worth investing in.
But technologies that are only valuable in lower margin networks.
They don't look good on the spreadsheet. They're not attractive. If you connect this to the bigger picture, companies develop their capabilities, their org structures, their cultures to be highly tailored to their existing value network's requirements.
It becomes ingrained.
Deeply ingrained, and this shapes their internal calculus of profitability. It makes investments in lower margin disruptive technologies seem, well, irrational, or at best, an unpleasant distraction from the core profitable business.
So managers, quite logically,
steer resources towards ventures that promise to maintain or improve profitability within their existing proven framework. It's a self-reinforcing system.
And this leads to this powerful force, what the sources call the northeastern pull. Not geographical, obviously.
No, directional, upmarket.
Right. This magnetic force pulling companies upmarket towards higher performance products, larger markets, promising higher gross margins.
And companies find this relatively easy to do.
Why?
Because their internal resource allocation processes, how they decide where to put money and people, they are inherently designed to chase these kinds of opportunities. They look more straightforward, less risky, and they align perfectly with existing customer demands and profitability models.
It's the path of least resistance.
And highest perceived reward.
Think about those disk drive makers again.
Yeah.
Always moving to higher capacity, higher performance drives.
Or the integrated steel mills we talked about, USX, Bethlehem Steel.
Right, when the minimills started taking the low-end rebar market.
The integrated mills basically abandoned those segments, almost with relief.
Yeah.
They focused their formidable resources on high-quality rolled sheet steel for cars, appliances, where they could command premium prices, get higher margins.
Because their customers demanded that quality.
Exactly. And their stock prices actually soared when they did this, which only reinforced the idea that this was the right strategy.
It looked like smart management.
And within their existing value network, it was a perfectly rational response.
But the flip side of that powerful upward pull is this profound downward immobility.
It's incredibly hard to go down market.
Moving into those smaller, poorly defined, lower margin markets that disruptive technologies enable. It just seems like anathema. Forbidden territory.
Rational managers can rarely build a convincing business case for it internally.
Why not?
Because their resource allocation systems, the whole budgeting process, it's designed to target resources toward known customer needs, assured markets. It systematically weeds out proposals for disruptive tech.
Because they look too risky, too small.
Exactly. Imagine you're a middle manager. You want to advance your career. Are you going to champion a project for a product that's initially worse than what you already sell, targets a tiny, unproven market, and promises lower profits?
Doesn't sound like a winning proposal.
It sounds like a career dead end. So understandably, managers back projects with clearer market demand, projects that fit the existing model. Not these speculative ventures that could easily be seen as failures later on.
It's a subtle force, but incredibly powerful.
Almost invisible. An internal mechanism that ensures disruptive innovation rarely gets the traction it needs inside a successful company.
And that's the real dilemma.
That's it right there. It's not about managers being blind or incompetent. It's about them being incredibly well-tuned, but to the wrong signal for the disruptive opportunity.
Right.
Remember that story about the CEO of a big disk drive company insisting there was no market for 1.8-inch drives?
Yeah, even while an engineer at Honda was actually using one from a startup.
Exactly, a little startup in Colorado. And the CEO wasn't necessarily wrong, given his company's value network and resource allocation processes.
It's a worldview.
His firm was set up to prioritize large orders, high performance, high margins from existing enterprise customers. And a tiny, low-margin 1.8-inch drive, It just didn't compute within that framework. The path of least resistance, the path of highest perceived reward for his organization, pointed firmly upmarket, making the disruptive opportunity almost invisible from his vantage point.
Okay, so it's not just about markets or profitability. It's also deeply rooted in the organization itself, its own DNA, kind of.
Yes, absolutely.
How do organizations themselves have capabilities that paradoxically can become disabilities? This seems key. Our sources use this really useful framework: resources, processes, and values, RPV.
The RPV framework, yeah. It's a great way to dissect what an organization can and cannot do, and crucially, why those capabilities can become limitations.
Okay, let's break it down. First, our resources.
Resources are the most visible assets. Your people, your equipment, technology, cash, brand names, intellectual property, all the tangible and intangible things you can point to.
And they're relatively flexible.
Generally, yes. You can hire people, fire people, buy equipment, sell divisions, acquire technology. Managers often mistakenly believe that just having the right resources, the smartest engineers, enough capital is enough to tackle any challenge.
But it's not just about having the right stuff.
It's often not the limiting factor. The reality is far more complex.
Right. Because you can have the best people, all the money in the world, but if your company isn't actually set up to do the new thing, it just won't happen effectively.
Which brings us to P, processes.
Okay.
Processes are the established ways an organization does its work. How it designs products, manufactures them, markets them, makes internal decisions about budgeting, customer service, everything.
The routines.
The ingrained routines, exactly. And processes, they're designed for consistency, for efficiency, and by their very nature, they are inflexible. They are meant not to change easily.
Because changing them disrupts the main business.
Precisely. This includes crucial background processes, too, like how you do market research, your financial forecasting models, how you manage your supply chain. They become the standard operating procedure.
And this raises an important question, right? We always think about assigning capable people to a new challenge.
Instinctively, yes. Get the A-team on it.
But the organization they work within also needs to be capable of handling that specific type of challenge.
That's the crucial insight. A process that's highly effective for designing, say, a complex, high-performance mini-computer is simply ineffective for developing a low-cost, rapidly iterated desktop PC. That requires a much faster design cycle, different cost considerations, maybe different manufacturing techniques.
So the process itself can be a mismatch.
A fundamental mismatch. And processes are where many organizations' most serious disabilities and coping with change reside. Because they are these deeply embedded routines, they are incredibly hard to alter without fundamentally disrupting the core business that those processes are designed to optimize.
They create efficiency, but kill adaptability.
For the existing business, they provide immense consistency and efficiency, but often at the high cost of adaptability to truly novel challenges.
Okay, so resources, processes. What's V?
V is for values.
Organizational values.
Not just ethical values, but the criteria by which managers and employees prioritize decisions. They are the unconscious filters through which opportunities get viewed.
How so?
Values reflect the company's cost structure and its business model. They guide what kinds of projects get flagged as good ideas or worth pursuing.
Okay.
So as companies grow, as they move upmarket chasing those higher margins, their values shift. They start demanding higher acceptable gross margins. They look for larger market opportunities to, move the needle.
Give me an example.
Okay, a company whose overhead structure requires, say, 40% gross margins to be profitable. It will instinctively kill ideas that promise only 20% margin.
Even if 20% is good for that new market.
Even then. Because those ideas simply don't fit the established way of making money or generating the expected shareholder value. Similarly, a multi-billion-dollar company is just not going to get excited about a $10 million market opportunity.
Even if it's the seed of something huge later.
Even then, because in the short term, it won't impact their overall growth targets in any meaningful way. The organization's values fundamentally define what opportunities are seen as interesting, profitable, and even strategically important.
So it's this powerful, almost unsettling idea The very processes and values that make an organization excellent at one thing.
Make it inherently bad at another.
They're two sides of the same coin.
Yeah.
Your strengths in one context become your rigidities, your disabilities in another.
Exactly. Consider Toyota became a global auto leader through continuous innovations in its processes, the Toyota production system, their development cycle, lean manufacturing, efficient supply chain.
Legendary stuff.
Legendary. Now, General Motors, in response, they invested billions in new resources, robots, automated equipment, trying to catch up. But GM applied these new resources within its old, antiquated processes, and the result? Very little improvement.
So the problem wasn't the resources.
The problem wasn't a lack of resources or smart people at GM. It was inflexible processes and values that prevented them from effectively using those resources to achieve true systemic improvement. They put new wine in old bottles.
And this is exactly why it's so incredibly difficult for large, successful companies to adapt to disruptive change.
It really is. In startups, everything's new, agile. Capabilities mostly reside in the flexible people and their ability to experiment, to pivot quickly.
They can change direction easily.
Relatively easily. But as companies mature, as they succeed, as they scale up and optimize for their existing markets, those capabilities migrate. They become embedded, hardwired into rigid processes and values.
They get locked in.
Locked in. And this makes large, successful companies inherently limited in their ability to address truly disruptive change, even when they have vast resources. Their past successes have trained them, programmed them to excel at the familiar.
Making the truly novel and disruptive seem illogical.
Or unprofitable, or simply irrelevant. It's like their corporate muscle memory is perfectly trained for yesterday's race, but suddenly a new game is being played on a different field.
Okay, so we've painted a pretty clear picture of this deep, ingrained problem. It's systemic.
Mm-hmm.
So if the normal principles of good management, listening to customers, investing for profit, actually lead to failure when facing disruptive tech, what's a company supposed to do?
Yeah, are they just doomed? Do they just watch new entrants come in and eat their lunch?
Or is there a way to break free? Can you manage this dilemma?
It's the critical question. And the good news is, yes, there are solutions, but they often require fundamentally rethinking how the organization operates. It's not about working harder at the old ways.
Okay.
Our sources make it pretty clear that some common approaches are actually wrong. They'll just make the problem worse.
Like
Right.
just intensifying good management practices. You know, better planning, working harder, becoming even more focused on your existing customers, taking a longer-term view of your existing markets.
Doing more of the same, just better.
Exactly. But those practices are tuned for sustaining innovation. They're not designed for disruption. So you're essentially just doing the wrong thing faster and more efficiently. You're pushing your current model towards its logical and potentially fatal conclusion.
Okay, so doubling down doesn't work. What else?
Trying to force an emerging market to grow big enough, fast enough to fit a large company's needs, that usually fails too.
Ah, like the Apple Newton example you mentioned.
Exactly. Apple poured huge resources into the Newton PDA in the early 90s. It was a priority for the CEO, John Sculley. Got lots of tech, lots of money, well over $100 million.
And it sold okay initially.
Sold about 140,000 units in its first couple of years. Sounds like a lot, right?
Yeah.
But for Apple, which was like a $5 billion company then, that was about 1% of their revenues, barely moved the needle.
So it was seen as a flop. Widely viewed as a flop and eventually discontinued. Not because the tech was inherently bad, but because it didn't fit Apple's values as a huge company with established high-volume product lines. They needed bigger wins. They tried to make a small market large enough to matter to them instead of building a product truly for that small market on its own terms.
Okay, forcing it doesn't work. What about waiting?
The second wrong approach, paradoxically, is waiting. Waiting until the new market gets large enough to be interesting before you jump in.
That sounds cautious, maybe sensible.
It might sometimes work. IBM arguably did this reasonably well with the PC market, entering after Apple and others had created it. But often waiting means you surrender crucial first-mover advantages to those nimble entrants.
While you wait, they're learning.
They're forging capabilities, building customer relationships, figuring out the market dynamics, things that become incredibly difficult and expensive for you to replicate later. By the time the market looks interesting enough for your big company, it's often too late to catch up effectively. The game's already moved on.
Okay, so those are the pitfalls. Intensifying the old ways, forcing the market, waiting too long. What are the right approaches then? How do you actually manage disruption?
Our sources suggest the key is to harness the forces that cause the dilemma, things like resource dependence, not fight against them.
Harness them. How?
It means creating an organizational context where the disruptive technology can actually thrive on its own terms, within its own different value network.
Okay.
And the most consistent path to success, supported by a lot of compelling evidence from different industries, is to spin out an independent organization,
Create a separate entity.
a completely autonomous business unit, or maybe even a separate company, perhaps largely owned by the parent, but operationally independent.
Why does that work so well?
It works because it effectively reverses the resource dependence problem. The new, smaller organization becomes dependent on the customers in the disruptive market.
Ah, so its survival depends on pleasing those customers.
Exactly. Which forces it to develop the appropriate, often lower cost, structures and values needed for that market. And small wins. They get excited about small wins that would be utterly insignificant, maybe even embarrassing to the giant parent company.
It changes the internal logic.
Completely. It builds a new mini company with its own rationale.
That makes sense. And it aligns growth needs too, right?
Perfectly. Small markets do solve the growth problems of small organizations. If you're a multi-billion-dollar company, a $50 million market is like nothing, a distraction.
But if you're a $50 million spin-out,
That $50 million market is your entire universe. It gives employees immense motivation, a clear focus. They can dedicate themselves to it.
and it allows for cost structure flexibility.
Crucially, this new entity can adopt a different business model. Maybe lower gross margins, higher inventory turns, different sales channels, things that would be completely unprofitable or unattractive to the mainstream business. They aren't shackled by the parent company's established values and overheads.
Can we see examples of this spin-out strategy working?
Oh, absolutely. Back to disk drives. Quantum was a leader in 8-inch drives, but it missed the 5.25-inch wave initially. To tackle the next disruption, the 3.5-inch drive, what did they do?
They spun something out.
They spun out Plus Development, 80% owned by Quantum, but a completely self-sufficient organization. Its own staff focused entirely on this new 3.5-inch market, even used contract manufacturing. And it was extremely successful.
Because it was independent.
Because it was allowed to build its own processes, its own values appropriate for that new market. Similarly, Control Data, CDC, a leader in 14-inch drives. When they wanted to enter the 5.25-inch market, they launched the effort in Oklahoma City.
Why Oklahoma City?
To deliberately isolate the group from the company's mainstream customer, to create an organization that could get excited about a $50,000 order, which would have been a rounding error for the main company in Minneapolis. They needed that separation.
And the discount retailing story provides that stark contrast too. Credge, which became Kmart, versus Woolworth's Woolco.
A classic comparison. Both entered discount retailing around the same time. But Credge's CEO, Harry Cunningham, made a radical choice.
What did he do?
He decided to exit their traditional variety store business entirely, focus 100% on discounting, brought in a completely new management team dedicated solely to the new model, a total reset.
Wow. Bold move.
Very. Woolworths, on the other hand, tried to run Woolco within its existing variety store structure.
So they kept it integrated.
Yeah, and they essentially forced Woolco to adopt Woolworth's traditional higher gross margins and operating model, which was totally unsuited for discounting, and Woolco ultimately failed.
So Credge harnessed the disruption by creating a separate value network.
While Woolworth tried to fight it by forcing the new disruptive model into the old sustaining structure, it just didn't work.
Hewlett-Packard with printers too.
Brilliant example. HP had the hugely successful LaserJet division in Boise. Highly profitable. When inkjet printers emerged initially, lower quality, lower price.
They could have just given it to the LaserJet guys.
They could have. But instead, HP created a completely autonomous unit up in Vancouver, specifically for inkjet printers, separate P&L, separate management.
And they let them compete.
They let the two divisions compete, sometimes even for the same desktop customers. And inkjet, initially inferior, eventually got good enough and captured many former LaserJet users by offering that lower price point and different benefits like color printing earlier on.
That takes real strategic discipline.
It does. It's about designing the organization itself to match the specific challenge. Rather than forcing that square peg into the round hole, it means accepting, maybe painfully, that what made you great in your core business might actually be a hindrance for tackling a totally different kind of innovation.
And this applies beyond just physical products.
Absolutely. Alan Bradley, a leader in traditional electromechanical motor controls, when electronic programmable controls emerged disruptive technology,
What do they do?
they acquired some small startups focused on these new electronic controls, but critically, they maintained them as separate business units, away from the mainstream electromechanical operations. Allowed them to operate with different processes, different values, different sales
Makes them
channels.
independent.
Or look at Walmart, the giant of brick-and-mortar retail. How do they manage their online retailing? Walmart.com.
Is it separate?
It's managed through an independent organization based out in Silicon Valley, far from their Arkansas HQ. Why? Because they recognize that e-commerce requires fundamentally different logistics, different distribution, a different profit model compared to their supercenters. They needed a separate entity to figure that out.
Okay, so the spin out seems key, but there's a catch, right?
A crucial one. For this spin-out strategy to actually work, the CEO's personal attentive oversight is absolutely essential, non-negotiable.
Why the CEO specifically?
Because a spin-out can't just be a way for senior management to get disruptive threats off their personal agendas, create it and forget it. Only the CEO has the strategic clout and the control over resources to ensure that the independent entity gets what it needs.
Resources and autonomy.
Resources, yes, but more importantly, the autonomy to develop its own appropriate processes and values for the new market. Without that consistent top-level support and, frankly, protection.
Protection from what?
Protection from the powerful gravitational pull of the mainstream business, which will inevitably try to reabsorb it or impose its own metrics or starve it of resources if it doesn't look profitable enough by the old standards.
So the CEO has to shield it.
The CEO has to act as the shield, the champion, making the CEO's role not just about strategy, but about being a strategic architect of the organization itself. It's a critical leadership function in managing disruption.
Okay, so let's say you do it right. You set up an independent organization, a spin out, you've got the CEO's backing, but a huge question still remains.
Yeah.
How do you actually find a market for something that doesn't really exist yet? Something customers don't even know they want or need? Traditional market research seems useless here.
It is worse than useless sometimes. It can be actively misleading.
Right. Focus groups, surveys, they ask people about what they know.
Exactly. For disruptive technologies, the market applications are truly unknowable at the time of development. You simply cannot learn about them from traditional market research because customers themselves don't know how they use a product that doesn't fit their existing needs or solve a problem they've already consciously articulated.
So it's not just unknown, it's unknowable.
That's a crucial insight. The future market for a disruptive product isn't just hidden somewhere waiting to be found. It literally hasn't formed yet. It emerges through use.
Which explains why forecasts are always wrong.
And this is why experts' forecasts about the size, the nature, the characteristics of emerging markets for disruptive technologies are consistently wrong. They tend to forecast based on current customer needs, projecting the present into the future, not anticipating genuinely new behaviors or applications.
Like the HP Kitty Hawk project again, the little 1.3-inch disk drive.
A painful lesson for HP. They invested heavily in meticulous market research. Hired consultants, ran surveys.
Then the research said.
It projected a substantial market for PDAs, personal digital assistants, and based on those forecasts, HP invested aggressively in manufacturing capacity for the Kitty Hawk drive.
But the market didn't materialize like that.
The forecasts proved fundamentally wrong. The PDA market didn't emerge as anticipated, certainly not at the scale predicted, leaving HP with this technically impressive but expensive little drive designed for a non-existent market. They spent aggressively to push technology beyond market readiness, assuming they knew the future market, when in fact it was unknowable. Contrast that with a more accidental yet highly illustrative success story. Honda motorcycles entering North America.
Okay.
Honda initially tried to sell large, powerful motorcycles here. They targeted the existing over-the-road market, dominated by Harley-Davidson.
Made sense on paper.
Looked logical.
Yeah.
But their big bike engines failed in the demanding U.S. conditions, nearly bankrupted their U.S. venture.
Ouch. So how did they succeed?
Accidentally. The Honda executives in the U.S., instead of using company cars, started using their own small, reliable 50cc Super Cubs to commute around L.A. And, crucially, they started using them for fun on weekends, riding them in the hills, off-road, dirt biking. They discovered, purely by observation of their own behavior and maybe seeing others do it, that there was this unforeseen off-road recreational market for small, lightweight, durable, cheap
A
bikes.
market nobody had targeted.
Nobody. And get this, Honda initially ignored a buyer from Sears who wanted to sell the Super Cubs.
Why?
Because they were still so focused on their big bike strategy and the traditional motorcycle market defined by Harley. They didn't research this new market. They literally stumbled into it by observing actual unexpected customer behavior.
It's not just physical products either, right?
Yep.
Intel didn't know PCs would be the killer app for microprocessors.
Exactly. When Intel first developed the microprocessor, they explored dozens of potential applications, calculators, traffic light controllers, industrial equipment. They had no idea personal computers would become the massive market they did. It emerged.
Or Intuit's QuickBooks. Hugely successful small business accounting software.
Massive success. And it wasn't designed by listening to accountants and focus groups.
How was it designed then?
Intuit observed how small business owners who typically weren't accountants were actually using their personal finance software, Quicken.
They were using Quicken for business.
Yeah, they saw people kind of shoehorning Quicken, trying to manage invoices, track expenses, do basic payroll. It wasn't designed for it, but people were making it work because it was simple.
So Intuit saw that unmet need.
They saw that real, unarticulated need, and they built QuickBooks. Simple, convenient, designed for the non-accountant small business owner. And it captured like 70% of the market because it solved that real problem, discovered through observation, not traditional research.
Okay, so if market research is out and forecasts are wrong,
Yeah.
how do you plan?
You adopt a fundamentally different approach. Call it discovery-driven planning or agnostic marketing.
Agnostic marketing, I like that.
The core philosophy is assume your initial forecasts are wrong, because they almost certainly will be for disruptive tech. Therefore, your plans shouldn't be rigid execution blueprints. They should be plans for learning and discovery.
Flexible plans.
Very flexible, conserve resources, especially early on. Don't bet the farm on the first idea. Plan for multiple stabs at getting it right, at testing different hypotheses about the market and the product.
How do you test them?
You engage in agnostic marketing, direct expeditions into the real market, get real products, maybe minimum viable products, into real people's hands for real money, if possible.
And watch what happens.
Watch what people do with the product, not just what they say they'll do in a survey. How do they actually use it? What problems does it solve for them? Maybe ones you didn't anticipate. It's an iterative, adaptive process. Hypothesis, test, learn, adjust, repeat.
Okay, that makes sense for finding the market. What about designing the actual product for disruptive innovation? Are there principles there?
Absolutely. Simplicity and convenience are king.
Keep it simple.
Disruptive products are typically smaller, simpler, cheaper, and often more convenient in some crucial way that the incumbent products aren't. Their initial value proposition is not superior performance on those mainstream metrics.
So don't try to beat the big guys at their own game initially.
Definitely not. Don't try to match feature for feature on the existing playing field. You're creating a new game on a different field.
And this means avoiding overshooting the market.
Critically important. Don't add features or functionality that the mainstream customers don't yet demand, especially if it makes the disruptive product too expensive or too complex for its emerging niche.
Like the Newton or Kitty Hawk again.
Exactly. Both tried to push the technology maybe too far, too fast. Sophisticated features like handwriting recognition on the Newton or shock sensors on the Kitty Hawk. Impressive technical feats, maybe. But they added cost and complexity that didn't align with what the nascent market truly valued at that point.
So focus on the core disruptive value.
It had a low price point. Disruptive products almost always have to have a lower sticker price to gain entry, even if the cost in use might initially be higher.
Like the early disk drives. Cheaper unit, higher cost per megabyte.
Perfect example. That lower unit price fit the emerging PC market's budget and their willingness to trade off capacity for affordability and size. Price is often a key enabler for disruption.
Okay, market discovery, product design. What about distribution strategy? Getting it to the customer.
Another crucial piece often overlooked. Disruptive products almost always end up redefining the dominant distribution channels.
Why is that?
Because the existing dealers, the established channels, their economic models, their values, they're tied to the mainstream product.
They make money selling the high-end stuff.
Exactly. Their profit margins are structured around higher-priced, higher-margin products and a low-cost, low-margin disruptive product. It's often anathema to their established business model and their sales incentives. Their salespeople aren't motivated to push it. They're simply not set up to sell it profitably or effectively.
Can you give examples?
Sure. Sony's first transistor radios, the portable ones, They couldn't really get traction in traditional appliance stores, which focused on large, expensive stereos and TVs.
So where do they sell them?
They ended up shifting to discount retailers, even drugstores, channels that had a different profit formula based on high volume, lower margins, impulse buys.
Honda's Super Cubs again.
Perfect example. Rejected by mainstream motorcycle dealers because they were too small, too cheap, too low margin. Honda had to partner with sporting goods stores initially to find a channel willing to sell them.
And Harley-Davidson trying to sell small bikes.
Conversely, Harley's attempts to sell small bikes through its existing dealer network largely failed. Why? Partly because the dealers, totally focused on selling high-margin big bikes, simply weren't motivated to sell the small ones. They might have even actively resisted them because it didn't fit their business.
So the distribution channel itself has to align with the new disruptive value network.
It has to. If it doesn't, the channel itself becomes another barrier, another source of friction, preventing the disruption from taking hold. You might need to build a whole new channel.
Okay, this framework is really powerful. To bring it home, let's apply it to something happening right now. The electric vehicle.
Ah, yes. The EV transition.
How does this innovator's dilemma play out for today's established automakers? It feels like we're watching this unfold in real time.
It is a truly fascinating and very current case study. Let's walk through it using the framework. First question. Is the electric vehicle disruptive?
Well,
For mainstream gasoline-powered cars, the key metrics customers prioritize are things like long range, super fast refueling, maybe low upfront cost per mile.
and EVs, especially early ones.
Typically underperformed on those traditional metrics. Shorter range, longer recharge times, often higher sticker prices initially.
But they offer different things.
Exactly. EVs offer a different package of attributes. Near zero emissions, remarkably quiet operation, instant torque giving a different driving feel, potentially lower running and maintenance costs.
And the tech is improving.
And critically, battery technology, the core enabling tech, is improving its performance energy density, cost faster than the rate of improvement demanded by the mainstream gasoline car market. This creates that classic overshoot scenario,
Where the new tech eventually gets good enough.
where current EV capabilities could eventually be good enough even for mainstream segments, but only after initially appealing to new segments based on their unique attributes. So yes, the evidence strongly suggests the EV is fundamentally a disruptive technology, not just a sustaining one like adding a turbocharger to a gasoline engine.
Okay, if it's disruptive, how does the framework help us understand what the big established automakers are doing now? We see the dilemma in action.
I think we do, quite clearly. Many established automakers are trying to force EVs into their mainstream markets primarily as sustaining technologies, meaning they're trying to build an electric minivan or an electric luxury sedan or a big electric pickup truck that directly competes feature for feature, range for range with their existing highly profitable gasoline counterparts.
Trying to make an EV that's just like a gas car, but electric.
Pretty much. And you often hear them declare that some major battery breakthrough in cost or density is absolutely essential before EVs can be commercially viable at scale.
So they're effectively waiting.
They're effectively waiting for the technology to mature enough to meet mainstream needs, as currently defined, before committing fully with all their resources. They're waiting for the sustaining tech parity.
And how does the framework critique that approach?
It highlights the core dilemma perfectly. Automakers trying to sell electric versions of their existing high-volume cars and trucks are framing the challenge as a sustaining technology problem. They feel they need to deliver performance parity or superiority on existing metrics like range and cost for their current, most profitable customers. But that demands a battery breakthrough that isn't quite here yet at the required price point. So they're essentially forcing that square peg into the round hole again. Their historical instincts, honed over decades of sustaining innovation in gasoline cars, are trained on the wrong target for a disruptive technology.
They're listening to their current best customers.
Who naturally say, yeah, I'll buy an EV when it has 400 miles of range, refuels in 5 minutes, and costs the same as my gas car. Which is the very trap the framework describes, where the logic of the core business prevents timely investment in the disruptive alternative on its own terms. They're defining the EV problem entirely within the context of their existing gasoline-based value network.
So, applying the framework proactively, what would be the right way for an established automaker to innovate with electric vehicles?
Okay, let's go through the steps. For marketing, Acknowledge that EVs, in their current state, maybe can't initially be used in all mainstream applications or compete directly on all metrics. The strategy shouldn't be direct substitution at first.
So what then?
Find new markets, initially small ones, maybe niches, where the current weaknesses of EVs are actually irrelevant or maybe even perceived as strengths.
Like the example from the sources, parents buying cars for teens.
That's a fascinating hypothetical from the material, yeah. Parents buying a first car for a high schooler might actually value slower acceleration for safety. They might value limited range because it keeps the teen close to home, especially if it comes with a lower sticker price, zero emissions for their eco-conscious side, and is styled appropriately for a young driver. Perfect for short commutes to school, friends' houses, part-time jobs.
A market nobody's really serving well.
Potentially.
And the method to find these markets.
Agnostic marketing. Don't rely on surveys asking middle-aged SUV buyers if they want a slower car with less range. Get real, perhaps simpler, EVs into the hands of different user groups, maybe fleet operators with predictable routes, maybe urban commuters, maybe those teenagers, and learn from their actual usage. Observe, adapt, iterate, be humble, acknowledge you don't know the answer beforehand.
Okay, what about product development for a disruptive EV strategy?
Focus on simplicity, reliability, maybe convenience in charging or size. Forget matching the feature list of a luxury SUV initially. Hit a lower price point that opens up these new, maybe more price-sensitive segments.
Build a cheaper EV first.
Potentially. And design a flexible vehicle platform that allows for quick, low-cost iterations. Assume your initial concepts about the product and market will be wrong, so plan to learn and adapt the product quickly. And crucially, do not make your critical path dependent on unproven technological breakthroughs, like a miracle battery suddenly appearing. Work with the technology you have, find the market it fits now, and let the breakthroughs emerge from the learning process of meeting specific needs in that new market.
And distribution strategy. Can they use their existing dealers?
The framework suggests probably not effectively, at least not for the truly disruptive lower-end EVs initially. You likely need to find or create new distribution channels. Mainstream car dealers have high overheads. Their business model relies on high margins from selling feature-rich vehicles, plus profits from servicing complex gasoline engines. A simpler, lower-cost, lower-margin EV that needs less service. It just doesn't fit their economic model or sales incentives well.
So they might need a different approach, like Tesla's direct sales.
That's one model. Or maybe partnerships with different types of retailers or online sales focused on specific segments. The point is, the existing channel is optimized for the old value network and is unlikely to embrace the disruptive product wholeheartedly.
And finally, organization. This seems critical.
Absolutely critical. The framework is unequivocal here. To succeed with a disruptive technology like the EV, an established automaker needs to create an independent organization, a true spin-out.
Not just a separate division within the main company.
Ideally, truly independent operationally. This is almost non-negotiable for success in a disruptive space, according to the research.
Why is that independence so vital?
It allows resource dependence to work for the project, not against it. It permits a cost structure and a set of values appropriate for an emerging small market. And it motivates employees differently. They get excited about the small wins needed to build that new market, wins that would be insignificant to the parent company.
You can't get engineers excited about a cheap penalty box EV inside a company focused on luxury trucks.
Exactly. It's a fundamental shift in values and priorities. A separate entity can embody that new mindset.
And the CEO's role.
Absolutely paramount. Personal, consistent oversight and protection for this independent entity to ensure it gets the resources and autonomy and to shield it from the inevitable internal resistance from the main organization.
Resistance.
Oh, yeah. The mainstream organization's processes and values will scream that the spin-out's approach, simpler products, lower margins, weird markets is wrong or unprofitable or damaging the brand. The CEO has to act as that shield, protecting the disruptive infant from the well-meaning but ultimately destructive embrace of the established giant.
It's a real act of strategic leadership.
It's an active visionary organizational design, really. Setting up the company not just for today's success, but for tomorrow's disruptions. Hashtag tag outro.
Wow. Okay, this deep dive, it really does turn a lot of conventional wisdom on its head, doesn't it?
It certainly challenges common assumptions.
It's just such a powerful reminder that good management isn't some kind of one-size-fits-all solution. What makes you great in one context
can be precisely what undermines you when truly disruptive technologies are at play.
Yeah.
Indeed. The innovator's dilemma forces us to fundamentally reconsider what good management truly means in a dynamic world. It's not always about being the leader in all technologies all the time.
Is more nuanced.
It's about knowing when to be a leader, perhaps in sustaining tech, knowing when it might be okay to be a follower, and crucially, knowing how to organize your company to accommodate both sustaining and disruptive innovation, often simultaneously but separately.
Recognizing capabilities and disabilities.
Exactly. It highlights that an organization's capabilities in one context can become its disabilities in another. It's about deliberately aligning the organizational structure, its processes, and its deeply held values with the specific nature of the innovation you're trying to foster.
Building the right container for the right kind of growth.
Well put.
So, as you, our listener, reflect on all this, what does it mean for you? Maybe as you navigate your own career or just observe the companies shaping our world. Here are a few provocative thoughts to chew on. First, are there times when it's truly right, even necessary, not to listen to your most profitable mainstream customers? What would that actually feel like in practice inside a company?
That's a tough one. Goes against the grain.
Second, can you think of companies that seem to have successfully upscaled themselves, chased higher margins, but maybe right out of a market they used to dominate? How might they have avoided that fate by embracing disruption from below earlier?
Seeing that pattern of moving upmarket and leaving the low end vulnerable?
And third, conversely, can you identify companies that did successfully upscale themselves to success precisely by leveraging disruption from below, patiently nurturing a small, seemingly insignificant market until it grew into a dominant force?
Companies that play the long game with disruption.
Yeah.
You know, the wheel of innovation, it always revolves, sometimes slowly, sometimes with breathtaking speed, but it definitely does not stand still. Understanding these fundamental forces, the dynamics of sustaining versus disruptive innovation, the gravity of value networks, the power of processes and values, it can be a powerful guide.
For making better decisions.
For future decisions, absolutely. Allowing you, perhaps, to anticipate change more effectively, to proactively shape the future, maybe even to create the next wave of disruption yourself, rather than just being swept away by it.
Powerful stuff to think about. Join us next time on The Deep Dive.